Oh, good afternoon. You're all so prompt. I thought this was going to be delayed after what we heard about the lunch. So, welcome to the session. There's going to be two presentations in this session. The first is on the Canadian Housing First Network, and the second one is this our group over here who's talking about opioids and Housing First and opioids. And so I'd like to, first of all, make a land acknowledgement that we're paying respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land here. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, the young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders past, present, and future. Oops. How do I move this? Thank you to my younger colleague here for helping us old guys out, you know, like all this technology overwhelming. It's just so nice to have a young man accompany me on this journey. We're going to talk for about 40 minutes or so about this Canadian Housing First Network, and Tim and I are the co-chairs of it. I'm just going to ask the order of things we're going to do. We're going to introduce any steering committee members who might be here. We're going to talk about our webinar series. We're going to talk about a project that we have in Winnipeg currently around an Indigenous Housing First fidelity scale. And we're going to ask you how the network could help you implement Housing First. Okay. So let me say first of all that the goal of our network is really to develop Housing First in Canada, to develop, evaluate, improve that, expand it, and our network is designed to be a resource to the expansion of the Pathways Housing First model, which we tested with Paula Gehring and many colleagues from across Canada in the At-Home Chez Soi Research Demonstration Project. So more specifically, our goals are to build capacity for Housing First, promote high quality implementation, promote continuous program improvement and the exploration of accreditation standards, something we're thinking about, and try to advocate and influence public policy. These are a list of our steering committee members. We have members from across Canada, every province. Are any of the steering committee members here today in the audience? Lisa. If so, just want to introduce yourself, say hi, Lisa.
Lisa Medford, the Mental Health Association in Ottawa, part of this group with the Ontario piece to begin.
Lisa's really contributed a lot from Ottawa. We frequently get her and her colleagues from the Ottawa branch of CMHA to talk about innovations that they've made. Anybody else here today? Okay. So we have a number of people that you'll see from across the country here. If you're interested in the network and maybe being on the steering committee, just speak to us. One of the things that our network does is educational activities, and we do this in the form of webinars primarily. We have had an International Housing First conference, but our main vehicle is webinars, and we try to organize a number of those every year. So you can see a list of the past webinars. We're now doing that in collaboration with the European Housing First Hub. So if you're not aware, Housing First has really taken off across many of the countries in Western Europe. And they have a Housing First hub that's funded by Fianza, their homelessness organization, and the Y Foundation in Finland. Through that, they have staff members, and we work collaboratively with them to identify issues. And we typically get a presenter from Canada, a presenter from Europe, maybe a discussant from one of those two sites too. Just to give you an idea of some of the, I won't mention all these, you can just read them from the slide, but there's a big debate about scattered and single-site housing. We had a really well-attended webinar on that. The last one that we held was on hoarding. And where we got the idea to discuss hoarding or do a presentation on it was from this meeting last year in Halifax. So we asked our network members and people in the audience, what would you like to see? Hoarding came up as an issue, and that was a big topic. That was we had like nearly 1,000 people sign up for the webinar, and over 500 were on the webinar from Europe and from Canada, a few from the US, and it was a terrific session. People are struggling, individuals struggle with hoarding, and many people don't have the background in knowing how to deal with this problem. And we had some really great presenters talk about their projects. So we do have one that we're going to do. It's just a week from now. You can sign up and register for this webinar. You do need to register, but you can then join. And it's going to be it's November 6th, whatever day that is. What day is it?
Wednesday.
It's Wednesday, okay, good. And 10 to 11:30 Eastern Time, if you're interested. This is on Housing First Worker Well-Being. That, again, came from last year. Like people said, we really need to take care of ourselves, collective care. The other thing that we want to do is something on harm reduction and substance use. We're actually planning on doing a couple of webinars on that. It's such a big topic that we think there might be substantial interest in that, which makes me think we should also be talking with these folks here afterwards about, like it could be a repeat performance, like a...
Geoff, could I mention something?
Yeah.
So all of these, you might look at the list and go, damn, I'm sorry I missed that. But all of the webinars have been uploaded to our website. So you can go there, you can look at them more than once if you think it's helpful. I wonder, it's easy to find. If you just put in Canadian Housing First Network, you'll find us. But we load a lot of resources on there. It's not only webinars. Geoff will talk a little bit about that.
I just want to also introduce the third member at the table, and that's Ayda Agha. Ayda was a Paula Gehring Award winner last year. She's here to help us take some notes, but we also have to wish her well because she's Tim's student. So first of all, she needs a lot of help, right? But also she's defending next Monday, her dissertation defense. So we just say, go girl, go Ayda. So we'd just like to take a few minutes and ask you, we have a couple of ideas around substance use for 2025, but we'd like you just talk to the person who you're sitting next to for a minute and talk about the things that you'd like to have covered in a webinar. And we're going to write those, Ayda's going to write those down for us. So you want to just take a couple minutes and chat with your neighbor. Please give us good ideas like you did last time.
No ideas?
So the next group, Geoff, is the housing first for people with and severe addictions and opioid addictions. So this is the pilot to present on.
Oh, okay.
From CMHA Ottawa.
I didn't. I should have known. I would have.
That's okay. Well, that's okay. We can mention it. It'll get mentioned. You're moderator.
Okay. Hey.
So this session is being recorded, so if there's ever somebody in the crowd that wants to say something, whatever, either point them to the mic.
Where's the mic? Okay, just over here.
It's over there.
Can we just pass the mic around?
You absolutely can.
Okay. We'll just pass it. Could you work that out?
Well, part of this post-doc with Stephen would involve actually evaluating the typhus and the coordinated access system. So it kind of makes it relevant to some of the work I'm doing at INSC, but I'll maybe tell you a little bit more about it after.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna break this party up. If you want to wind up your conversations, and we're gonna take your ideas in just 1 minute, or as soon as it gets quiet. So if you have an idea for a webinar or some topics, we'd like to get those from you now. And Tim's got the mic, so for the recording of the session, it'd be helpful if you just raise your hand so we can have Tim give you the mic to talk from. So there's a couple of people. There's a gentleman here. There's three people in the middle.
So we discussed guest management.
Guest management. Gosh, I could need to use that program at home too.
I'd like to learn more about graduating from Housing First programs and ensuring housing stability following that.
Great. It's a gentleman right there.
Okay, so like with all these webinars and stuff, we're excluding the communities themselves that are involved. And what we're doing is we're having the middle class that has created this crisis through Keynesian economy, and then through the implementation of neoliberal shock economy, coming up with new solutions. Not many homeless people have access to the internet, and issues aren't hoarding or whatever. Issues are the decisions that decision makers are implementing that are killing the homeless community. So what we need to do is go to the places where the people are and engage with the people. If we're going to have webinars, let's have them at safe consumption sites. Let's have them at encampments. Let's like change the narrative so it's not the middle class that's always writing what must happen, but have the people who are affected, you know, actually implement stuff. And let's not like make the fault be of the person, oh, you need to learn how to shop better or how to eat better.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't need this Mike Harris bullshit.
Are you from Waterloo?
Kitchener.
Yes. Julian?
Yeah.
We met somewhere along the lines, I think through Helmut.
Yeah, Helmut Braun.
Helmut Braun. Yeah. Hey, thanks for that. You know, I'm sure you get a lot of resonance from that. There's a lot of structural barriers and structural creation of these kinds of problems, and we shouldn't neglect that. That should be front and center. So thank you, Julian. Somebody else got the mic in behind.
So we talked about something very similar, which was a webinar on navigating these systems, but using the voices at the forefront of people with lived experiences.
Yeah.
So we are creating, modular developments, low-income housing, all of these different things, but it really is larger, municipalities and governments that are making these decisions.
Yeah.
And really, we need to have way more people who are living this life every day.
Yes.
It would be nice to learn how to navigate that. So it's trauma-informed, people are shown respect, non-stigmatic, things like that.
Thank you.
There's our friend, Mark. Good to see you, Mark.
I had to make you walk to the back of the room. Acquired brain injury and looking at within a housing first framework, supporting, identifying and supporting in appropriate ways.
Thank you. We got a person over here, Tim.
Okay. Good. This is good. It's too much sitting today, so this is good.
The doctor's getting his exercise.
I think with where I'm from, there needs to be more support for people living with addictions, as people going to check on people. My daughter has been addicted to fentanyl. She's one of the highest risks and has overdosed and still has no support. She can't walk. She's in a walker.
Yeah.
And no one checks on her there. There's no support, and the doctors don't help her in regards with safe supply delivery. And so she's using street level still, and no support for anything from health and social from nowhere. Goes and checks on the people at the shelter or at Housing First. We just had another overdose there a couple days ago, and it's ongoing. We're probably the highest per capita in Whitehorse, Yukon.
Okay.
And yet there's no support for the people that are actually suffering with the addictions. No one goes to them and says, what can I do for you today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the doctors don't help them with delivery if they can't walk. You have to get up and go get your safe supply,
Yeah.
which a lot can't. But yeah, I think that's very huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And all the best to you and your daughter, too.
Yes.
You know, we're all thinking of you and hoping that some good happens that way. There's somebody in the middle there.
I have the microphone.
Well, there you got it. You got the power.
I think a big thing for me anyways that I notice with clients and Housing First programs is people that have lived in poverty for so long that maybe don't have the life skills or the mental capacity to maintain housing or maintain their cleanliness, maintain what's going on within the home.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great they have a roof over their head, but when you're walking into somewhere or a unit or a modular home that's filled from the ground up with garbage,
Yeah.
who's helping those people? And I think the supportive housing staff are so busy, and there's
Yeah.
not many actually working there at a time, like maybe 2 staff, 3 staff to 150 units. Who's maintaining those units, right? So I think a big thing for me is I'm noticing life skills with people that are living with mental health issues.
So it's not just getting housing, but it's maintaining the housing, too.
And the life skills that go into keeping
Thank
a
you.
home, yeah.
Okay. I think we have maybe time for 1 or 2 more. So there's somebody here, like she's been waiting for a while. You want to raise your hand so he knows? There we go.
Great, thanks.
And we'll take maybe one more after this, and then we're going to have to keep moving.
I just would be helpful to have some strategies on community integration.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I think there's going to be there's also going to be a presentation on that, Tim, right? That's coming up. Is it this afternoon or tomorrow on social prescribing and community integration?
It's tomorrow.
Okay.
on integrating social prescribing and housing first.
Yeah, you might be interested in that. There's one more person back here on the other side, I think.
That's okay, I don't need a microphone.
Oh, yeah, but we would need it for the recording. Yeah. Besides, he's got to get a workout, you know, he has to get that man moving.
How about collaborative outreach?
Okay.
A lot of organizations don't know what outreach really does, and because we are the boots on the ground, we are out there every day, telling the service providers how we can help them and how they can help us, and getting people to those services. Examples like the person was saying earlier, if people are having medical issues, a doctor could walk with outreach and once a month, once a week, whatever, and go see people where they are, where they live, and give them services there.
Thank you. Okay, Tim, I think we should probably move ahead. But thank you. These are great ideas, and you're likely to see some of them, you know, coming up in future webinars. Like, we just have to coordinate with our colleagues in Europe and try to find the best ones. Check out our website, though. As Tim said, these webinars are recorded. We also have a lot of handy documents on there that might be useful too. I'm just going to say another function of the network is to ensure fidelity to the Housing First model. And how many people have had in their program, their Housing First program, done a fidelity assessment? Can you raise your hand if you've done one? So there's a few people out there who've done this. So we have worked with several different programs. We're developing different approaches to doing this, fidelity exchanges. Tim just did one with Peel and a program in Ireland where they did like a virtual fidelity exchange. So we're very interested in this and trying to expand our capacity to do fidelity assessment. And another part of this is adapting the fidelity assessment. So sometimes adapting to some people means moving away from the model in a way that's not resembling what it does. But I think we also can think of it in terms of what things can be added that make it more relevant to particular groups. So just say quickly that we're working right now with End Homelessness Winnipeg, the two of us, Tim and I, and we're collaboratively developing with Indigenous organization, this End Homelessness Winnipeg, to try to come up with domains and items that reflect an Indigenous lens on Housing First practice. So we've done our first phase of this. We've done some focus groups. We have some ideas about this, and that program is, that practice is in process. What we hope to do in the new year is, once we get these additional items for this tool, is to be able to, there's 9 programs in Winnipeg, to get some kind of a exchange program going between the programs and build their capacity to do their own fidelity assessments. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're interested, we're certainly available to help you connect with people who can facilitate, like whether it's the exchange, where one program assesses the fidelity of the others. It's a really nice learning experience. As Geoff said, we did it virtually, and we even went internationally, which I think both sides found quite rich, the program in Galway and the one in Peel. But also there's even a way of doing it internally, where you don't have to go outside. It's not that complicated. There's, you know, what we're looking at is there's about 41 standards. Nobody gets 100% or even close to 100%, but it can give you some ideas about how to improve your Housing First program. And every program is an adaptation. But as I said, if there's interest, just contact us, and we'll be happy to connect you to the right folks. The Canadian Alliance has a training unit that does that kind of work, and that have been members of our steering committee, actually.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'm just going to say we're getting closer to the end here. I'm just going to say that there are some other activities that our network is doing. 10 years ago, the Mental Health Commission put together a toolkit on Housing First. You might know of that. It's online. You can get it through the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. If you Google Canadian Housing First Toolkit, you'll get it. But it's 10 years out of date. There's a lot of updates that need to be done. So we're in the process of looking at trying to get some money to support the development of an updated version of the toolkit. We are trying to contact provincial, federal, and local politicians about Housing First and get it back on their radar or get it on their radar. That's a longer term struggle, but this is something that we're trying to be active in, is educating people. To that end, we've written several op-eds about Housing First to let the public know about it. Recently in my community, the Regional Council just approved substantial funding for a cabin project, which is located next to the city dump in Waterloo. And I just couldn't believe it, so I wrote this op-ed about it. And what we could have, that would be a Housing First program that would give people some dignity, more so than these cabins out by the dump. That's an example. We have a lot of resource materials that you can get off the website. The Fidelity Manual, there's a manual, there's evidence at a glance, there's policy briefs. And what else? There's a participation in a Housing First conference that the Mental Health Commission of Canada held yesterday. We attended that and participated in that particular activity. Do we have time, do you think, to have people answer these questions? Should we just go around with the mic again for a minute, or do we have enough time? I don't want to cut into these folks' time. 5 minutes? Okay. Well, maybe what we'll do is that we'll just do this again, like talk to your neighbor, and what we'd like to, there's a few things in here, questions what are the burning issues you face? How can the network support you in what you're doing? And what would you like to contribute to the network? You can pick any one of those questions. You're not going to get through all three of them, but if you want to just pick out one, we just like to get it recorded. And it helps us get direction as to what are we going to do in the next year with our network. So again, talk to your neighbor. We're going to take about 5 minutes, and then we'll bring our session to a close. Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. We're going to bring this to is this thing on? Yeah, we're going to just ask for a little bit of feedback on this, just some some of the questions that you wanted to have us address. So if we can wind this part down, we're going to do the same thing as last time. We're just going to take a few minutes and get the mic from Tim. You can always speak to us afterwards, too, if you have additional ideas. So who would like to go? Okay, now, Julian, you've gone once, so I'm going to ask if somebody else wants to go first, but I got you there.
I just want to talk about the so-called CAP.
Pardon me?
The near concentration camp at council. I'm going to talk about that.
You want to talk about that? Well,
How the housing first fits into what you call the CAP.
yeah, okay. Why don't we talk?
It's a serious issue. There were 2 deaths there. We did a report. There was sexual assault that took place there.
Shit.
And that wasn't even reported to the region.
That's terrible.
And the region was asked, do you want to open it or do you want it to be shut down? If we go and we investigate something under Housing First, and we make a report, and we spend our time to interview people, and we bring a report to the region, the staff of the region should present the bloody report. And like, there's Jewish groups that are calling it a near concentration camp.
Oh, is that
It's
right?
expensive.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, have you read the report that just came out?
I didn't.
You should read it. It wasn't
I'll
presented to council.
Okay.
The whole thing was like, and so how can we put a housing first strategy
Yeah.
when the information we gather isn't even, you know what I mean? And like,
I
council
understand.
doesn't even, you know, they tell us to make these reports and then like they brush us off.
I hear you. Yeah,
Okay, so what's
yeah.
the solution?
That's a question, huh? Like, what's the solution? So maybe you and I can talk afterwards, and I'd be interested in hearing about your report, which I hadn't heard about until right
No,
now.
my report was done by the region through the Social Development Center.
Okay, well, yeah, I'd like to see it. Okay, thank you. Are there other people who want to have, you haven't had a chance to speak. Right here, Tim.
Okay.
Hello, I'm with CMHA Ontario.
Okay.
And I run the housing community of practice. One of the biggest things that came up in talking about Housing First, we had a member who said she didn't feel comfortable calling the housing program that they run in their branch Housing First because there is no housing. So the lack of access to units, even though the philosophy behind their program absolutely follows the Pathways to Housing model, but she said she felt really uncomfortable calling it a Housing First program because they weren't actually able to provide housing first. So I feel like that's a big sticking point for a lot of people.
Yes, it is. Yep, thank you. There's one sec. In the middle, Tim.
I feel like hello, I'm Ashley, work for Urban Native Housing in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Oh.
So I do street outreach, so my burning issues range from like a lack of funding, like there just is not enough funding for what is
Yes.
needed. So right now, like big concern about water in the winter, taps get turned off, and then suddenly drinking, bathing, all water use, like there's nowhere to get it.
Right.
So outreach teams often have to provide it, and it's not like we have extra funding for that. So funding's a big one. I'm also going to reiterate that there's no housing.
Yeah.
And then if there is housing, though, I feel like the way Housing First is being implemented is it's not housing first, it's housing done. So wraparound supports aren't being put in place. And if you look at any of the places that do
Yeah.
Housing First effectively, it's like literally they're like house first and then room right away,
Yeah.
all the wraparound supports. But I feel like we're just dropping people in houses and saying, you're done, you're good, bye-bye.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
And that's not Housing First, you're right.
Yeah, that's not, well,
No.
it's not
You're
Housing
right.
First.
Absolutely.
So the lack of wraparound supports being built in.
Yeah.
And then we're almost setting people up for more failure because then you get housed and
Of course you
unhoused
are.
quickly. And that's more trauma.
And then you get a bad name.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's more trauma there, right? Because then it's
Absolutely.
that shoes drop quicker. I can't trust that a thing is going to be safe. So,
It's not a successful approach, not
Yeah.
likely to have success.
so those are my burning issues.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pass.
Right there. We'll
Hi.
take one more after this. Go
Hi,
ahead.
I'm Bethany from Grand Prairie. We have the Housing First contract. And our problem really is the cost of units in our area and also the lack of funding. For example, the funding that we get caps out at $500 a person, and that is not enough for landlords to agree that they'll be a stable housing participant.
It's not enough. Maybe one more at the back. Tim, you've lost the mic. Come on. Jeez.
I think this probably exists somewhere. I just haven't been able to find it online. But standards of care, like a template that could be used for calls for proposals or in monitoring, just from a funder perspective, that would make it a lot easier for funders to understand what's going on in the community and to be funding programs that are providing those wraparound supports.
Yeah. And we are fully in agreement with that. Maybe that's would be a good topic, Tim, is like around the standards of care. Because
well, and I think it starts to get into the fidelity issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which I think probably, we've had some discussion of it in the network, but, we might be due.
Something on that.
Yeah, I think so.
Something on that.
Others at the back here that haven't had a chance.
I was going to bring it back to the beginning and just convincing people to actually sign the paperwork, to actually apply for Housing First is an issue, because a lot of the times, at least when I'm out on the street, and you meet somebody new who's not on the Housing First network, you have to convince them to even apply, because they believe that it's a waste of time. They believe that all these things. So just getting them to agree to fill out the forms is sometimes very, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, some people just don't have any faith or trust anymore because they've been jerked around for so long. So it's remarkable what happens when people see it's actually real. You actually have the housing for an apartment that somebody could view, et cetera, and that they can get in it. Like the program in Montreal that was discussed this morning that I went to. Listen, this is really great. I'm very grateful, thankful to you for all your input to us. Love to talk with you more, but we're going to pass this show on to any last things you want to say?
I just want to mention, there's a lot of burning issues. We certainly hear about that. But we also know that the programs in which you're involved are really making a difference in the lives of people. What's really been clear, because we've had a lot of contact with these folks in Europe, we've had contact with programs across the country, Housing First programs, they have such a high rate of success of ending homelessness, despite all the challenges. And one of the functions we do want to serve in supporting your work is the advocacy function. So when we talk about the size of rent supplements or the lack of affordable housing, or not having enough, kind of positions in Housing First programs, or needing more programs. These are the kind of things we've continued to push for. When we did the survey, we got an estimate of the number of programs in the country. It's somewhere close to 100, we think, across the country. I mean, certainly urban, rural, and so on in different sized cities. We think we probably need to really end chronic homelessness close to 3 times the number of programs. So, we're going to keep pushing for that kind of growth and expansion. So, thanks so much for the work that you do.
Thank you. And as we close, I'm just going to note that's our website up there. Probably you could just use Google though to find it. The Housing First, Canadian Housing First Network. There's also our emails up there if you'd like to contact us. The person who's not here with us today is Rosanna Coriandoli. She's our person who's our contact from CAMH, who helps us out with the webinars and many other activities. So thank you again. Okay, we really appreciate it. Okay.
Probably have a minute to stretch a bit. Yeah. Probably not leave the room, but.
If anybody would like to do that together with us, we could put our arms in the air. Wave it around.
Okay. It's a pleasure to introduce this next set of presenters, people whom I know, and an agency where I have a close relationship with for many, many years. I always say about the Ottawa branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association, they're always ahead of the curve. And we know we're dealing with right now an opioid crisis. And it raises the question, how do you deliver housing first in that context and support people, keep them alive, and get them housed, get them off the street, and start working towards getting lives back together, getting integrated back in the community. So that's what you're going to hear is a pilot program that's being implemented at CMHA Ottawa called the Full House. And I guess you'll explain why Full House. It's not empty house, right? So we're going to hear from Chris. Who's going to present first? Christina? Okay, all right. And I'll get you each to introduce yourselves. There's a whole bunch of people mentioned here that are part of this program. So we'll start and hear from Christina Mutschler, who's at the University of Ottawa and CMHA Ottawa, and you'll, I guess, talk about the other presenters and introduce them. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to talk to you today about our pilot project, as Tim was mentioning. So we'll be speaking about our work using the Housing First model with individuals who have complex substance use, and particularly who use opioids, which is called the Full House Initiative. So I'm Christina Mutschler, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Ottawa and CMHA Ottawa. And I'm joined by Marcela, Farias, and Mick Phipps, who are case managers at CMHA Ottawa. So this presentation would not be possible without our amazing Full House team. The team is made up of staff members from CMHA Ottawa who are passionate about housing individuals who are the hardest to reach. They come from case management, concurrent disorders, harm reduction, nursing, housing support, as well as research and evaluation. Today, we're going to talk to you about our project on housing those with complex substance use. First, I'll speak a bit about the Housing First approach that's used at CMHA Ottawa. Then I will go over the challenges of using the model with those who use opioids and are living with serious mental illness. And then we will provide an overview of our project, which was designed to combat these issues. We'll discuss our evaluation and outcomes, including successes and challenges, and end with our next steps for the project. So just briefly, to give you an overview of CMHA Ottawa, our mission is to offer evidence-informed services for individuals experiencing serious mental illness. We hope to promote positive mental health and provide an integrated system of care in collaboration with clients, families, service providers, and other stakeholders. Generally, our referrals for CMHA Ottawa are individuals who have serious mental illness, who are homeless or vulnerably housed, and clients with multiple complex needs are prioritized. In particular, for our Full House project, our clients come through our housing outreach team, who work with clients who are currently unhoused and living on the street or in shelter. Some other services that are offered by CMHA Ottawa include subsidized housing, peer support, concurrent disorder treatment, DBT support, as well as primary and psychiatric health care. CMHA Ottawa practices housing first based on the Pathways model. And just to note that the organization was found to have high fidelity when it was assessed in 2012. So now that you know a little bit about CMHA Ottawa, we will discuss in more detail the specific challenges that occur when implementing Housing First with those who have complex substance use. So research has found that Housing First participants who have substance use concerns spend less time in stable housing than those who are without. However, there's no differences on outcomes such as community functioning, quality of life, or mental health symptoms. So what this suggests is that if we can get these folks into housing and stably housed, they can have just as good of outcomes as those who are without substance use problems. And as our fellow presenters, Tim and Geoff, talked about previously, Housing First programs may need to be adapted in order to best serve the population that you're working with. So researchers have suggested that additional services that target specific outcomes needed for a population should be integrated and tested to better support those with differing needs.
Hi. I will be describing what we mean by complex substance use here. First, I'll clarify that we're not referring to substance use as a readiness or an eligibility issue for housing. Rather, the idea is to highlight the barriers that people face when trying to access and maintain housing. So here we're not just talking about the substances or the substance use itself, but layers of challenges and the impacts that substance use has that makes it harder to access services and also more likely for someone to experience discrimination. So we're thinking of stigma, criminalization, access to health care, mental health and physical health concerns, relationship breakdowns. So these are challenges that persist after moving in, with more interactions with neighbors, dealing with landlords, conflicts with police. And some neighborhoods we've noticed are just not as supportive as others to harm reduction, or they're just not set up for it. Simple things like finding a pharmacy that dispenses methadone, finding clean syringes, finding clean pipes, or someone who does safer supply prescriptions, that can change depending on where you are in the city. Oh, whoops. I'm using paper. So where are we? Oh yeah. So how does that why does that matter for Housing First? First of all, it's just hard to get housing. You know, we've talked about this already in this room. Housing First is a lot easier to do when there is housing. So that lack of affordable housing can be made even harder to access if you're using substances. If you have substance-related costs to manage, then there's all these requirements to access social housing, to access the registry, which may mean having and keeping documentation, keeping regular contact with someone, keeping an address, keeping a phone number, that kind of thing. All of that can be even more challenging with less stability. Then there's access to services. So some services just aren't adapted for folks who are using substances. Some even exclude them. Some folks also decide to avoid a certain service because it doesn't suit them or doesn't work for them. That's how we end up with folks who are sleeping outdoors, who are staying in stairwells, and the folks that we worked with here in this case, we're doing just that. Some were accessing shelter here and there sporadically, which makes this next challenge even harder, is staying in touch. Staying in touch is a big challenge for us. We spend a lot of time just trying to find each other. Yeah, and then even when we do find each other, there's often this urgent need or something that's a higher priority than actually going through those steps that are required for getting housing. There's that transition into housing. The time between getting an offer and moving in is really, really short sometimes, and there's so much to do. And that can be overwhelming. It can feel rushed. We can miss appointments. We can end up missing deadlines, even lease signings. And some folks end up feeling like they're being placed instead of participating in a life decision for themselves. And then there's these ongoing challenges after moving in, you know, like complaints from neighbors, eviction notices, home takeovers. All those kinds of things tend to happen pretty quickly within those first weeks of moving in. And we've also had folks telling us that they experience a feeling of loss or loneliness, isolation, especially if their community was centered more around substance use or a particular harm reduction service. Now, so here we have a few quotes. I'll read some out for you, but this is to kind of highlight the personal experiences. So words from the folks involved who are housed. We had people saying the paperwork was impossible. I didn't have ID and no one could help me replace it. And even if I did, I couldn't hang on to it. Every time I went to see a place, I just felt judged. They'd take one look at me and decide I wasn't worth the hassle. Even when I found places to stay, I'd get kicked out the next day because I was too loud. I don't go to the community room in my own building. I don't feel like I belong. I see the way people look at me. These are some of the challenges we were hearing. Do I have more? Yes. Okay. We will be speaking, this next section is about the program development. So we'll be looking at how the project was designed, some of the key activities that brought it to life, the adaptations that we made, so we can still do Housing First with adaptations. And we'll do a quick overview of client profiles, if that sounds good for everyone. Thank you. Oh, I keep going.
One more.
Yes. Oh, this is my favorite part. Okay. So here I get to tell you kind of what we did, what we tried. The idea, we were trying to figure out how we effectively address challenges of providing housing first for people experiencing homelessness and that complex substance use. So we knew it was possible. We also knew we'd have to adapt the model to fit the needs of our clients. rather than expecting them to change to fit the model. So we took a collaborative approach, and we did that by removing as many barriers to communication and planning as possible. Marcela will speak more to that shortly. We built this dedicated team to sit around a table in real life in the same room regularly to focus solely on the 10 clients in the program. We worked with those 10 individuals. Most were unsheltered. So again, sleeping outdoors, sleeping in stairwells, and some couch surfing. And most were experiencing very little stability, were actively seeking housing, and spending most of their time and energy on survival needs. Most were using opioids and other substances, and many identified substance use as that main barrier to accessing housing or services that they were looking for. So our objective was clear, how to apply that housing first principle while adapting our best practices to meet the realities of those clients. We were committed to doing it together, and that's how Full House became a thing. Thank you. I'll be back.
I've come to relieve Mick and speak a little bit about the activities now. So how did us Full Housers do this work together? Well, we held weekly meetings of the entire multidisciplinary team. And this collaborative effort allowed for myself and for Mick to bring forward those 10 original referrals as referrals to the collective. And we gathered all together every week to discuss the unique needs and hopes of each individual while prioritizing, accessing, securing, and maintaining housing. Once the individuals were integrated into the project, the services became integrative as well. And we optimized the strengths and resources that we had in the diversity of our team to be able to, in a timely manner as much as possible, address the needs that individuals had as seamlessly as possible as well. We also spent some time focusing on the future, and we discussed bridging and planning to intensive case management services or other community resources as successes were achieved and time developed. All right. So with that being said, a really important question for us to address is, how is the Full House Project unique? I'm glad you guys asked. So we optimized our currently existing partnerships to secure rapid access to housing, often within areas that individuals, or as much as possible, I should say, in areas where individuals were feeling safe and comfortable. And then we supported with arranging all of the initial housing logistics, from first month's rent support to ensuring that there is a plan for food to be in the fridge at move-in. We also advocated for respite to be available prior to move-in in the form of a hotel stay or extended time within hospital or treatment programs to allow the individuals in the project the opportunity to be removed from unstable housing environments prior to their new housing opportunities. We chose this approach in order to hopefully promote stability, sometimes in the form of increased restful sleep, being able to finally address some outstanding healthcare needs, or to be collaborative together on what move-in could look like. We also ensured that support from the entire team was maintained from the time of referral, and especially focused on those first few days of housing, where a lot of common concerns arise, including loneliness, the experience of unwanted guests, you name it. Lastly, the intention we set to move forward as a team to support the individuals in the project versus the traditional model of one housing-focused worker per individual was critical. It allowed us to have more effective interventions to be held in timely manners, and allowed us to create space for more creative problem solving as a group when deciding upon interventions. Okay. So now we're going to hear from one of our lovely participants who will shine a light, or help us shine a light, I should say, on how the Full House approach was different than other care that she's experienced in the past.
For housing this time, what was it like for you?
It was awesome. It was excellent because of my mental health too, my schizophrenia. So, like they were willing to. They said they were willing to help me all the way, like as much as I need it. You know, they're willing to help me. They don't want to see me lose my place, and they don't want to see me like go down. They want me to go up. You know, they don't want me to fall. They want me to go up in life. They want to help me as much as they can. Because of my situation too, my circumstances are we're really severe and are severe. Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, thank you.
For housing this time.
There we go. Okay, yeah, so I can speak a little bit more on like some of the quotes that we received in terms of adaptations. So these quotes were, for the first time, it felt like people were working with me and not telling me what to do. I wasn't dropped if I missed an appointment. They kept checking in even when I was struggling. And the team made sure to find a place to live, and my recovery were both a priority. It wasn't one or the other. Right? So we were also really thankful to have heard from our participant. And now I'm going to pass it back to Christina, who's going to walk us through the program evaluations, achievements, challenges, and next steps.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the specific clients that are in our program. So far we have housed 10 clients using our approach. We have 7 females, 3 males. The majority were white, though 4 out of the 10 identified as Indigenous, and all 10 had a substance use disorder and were opioid users. This graph up here is a presentation of the presenting issues or the particular things that the clients identified as being a problem for them. So you'll see that 100% of the folks in the project had problems with substance use, relationships, financial, and housing, as well as numerous other concerns. And you can see how complex this population is, where it's very difficult for one worker to be able to work on all of these things. So it was helpful for the team to be able to, our housing workers can work on housing, our harm reduction, our concurrent disorders workers can work on substance use, and our nursing team can work on healthcare. So we can really divide and conquer for these folks who are coming in with very complex presenting problems. So quickly, we'll take a look at our outcomes of the Full House program. So all 10 clients have been successfully housed. We've had no eviction notices issued, despite ongoing substance use. 2 clients have maintained housing for over a year, and 2 clients transitioned from residential treatment into independent housing. All clients are actively engaged in substance use support, whether that's harm reduction or concurrent disorders treatment. 8 of them participate in a safer supply program, and 2 clients are currently maintaining their sobriety. In terms of an important outcome was client engagement and contacts. You might remember Mick at the beginning of the presentation talking about just how hard it is to find folks. So one of our outcomes was also just having better engagement with clients. So we found more consistent communication and engagement throughout the program, and clients had more diverse activities and treatment plans. So I have 2 examples of this to share today. So you'll see this is our client 1 for an example. The little house is when this client entered housing and the Full House project. You'll see that prior to housing, their only contacts were with their primary worker, and you'll see ISO, which means in search of. This means our worker was trying to find them, couldn't find them. You'll see after housing, this individual then got connected with our concurrent disorders team. So this individual in particular really wanted support around harm reduction. So our harm reduction worker was able to meet with the client often, figure out where the pharmacy was to pick up safe supply, and got him oriented to his neighborhood. A second case here, you'll see the little house down here. This individual had a little bit of a different contact journey where this client really needed a lot of physical health interventions. So we had our nurse, and our nurse practitioner was very, very involved in this client's care for a number of medical concerns. And she also had that concurrent disorders treatment contact as well. So you can see as soon as enrollment in the Full House program and housing was acquired, our contacts, our ability to give that person the care that they need increased substantially.
This is another favorite part. We get to talk about our successes. So let's go over some of them. The first one was that stabilization period prior to housing. This wasn't a requirement in order to access housing. It's just something that we tried to negotiate as much as possible for clients. And it looked different for everyone. So as we mentioned, some were able to get a hotel stay. Others stayed longer in residential treatment or in hospital. And we also negotiated with shelters to accept temporarily folks who were otherwise barred. So knowing where clients would be in the morning was a great help for connecting, planning, and moving through those steps to get housing. And clients reported being rested and prepared and feeling well enough to go through some of those steps. Increased engagement. That was another big success, as highlighted in our graphs earlier. Once clients were housed, they got used to a lot of us coming over to knock on the door, especially in those first few weeks after housing, and that regular support helped with engagement, but it helped build kind of a deeper, more meaningful connection over time and a better understanding of what that person wanted to do with housing or after housing. Dedicated team support, that was another game changer. With everyone in the same room during those frequent meetings, we didn't have to kind of wait for referrals or have long wait times, or someone could pop up and share an idea that they might have. So there was a lot of brainstorming going on. And finally, that collaborative focus is what really paid off for us. Having those clear roles, the shared responsibilities, which we've mentioned, meant that no one had to be a jack of all trades doing everything at once, or trying to and not doing it so well. We were able to separate that in a team. So those were our successes. We also learned some lessons.
We're on a roll here, folks. All right. So in any effort to do things differently, there are always a few lessons that are learned along the way, and that was definitely true for us with the Full House project so far as well. So, for instance, we did face the obstacle that's created by a lack of housing and a lack of housing options to present to folks. So we found that housing affordability and accessibility remain severe issues, especially for individuals who may not have extensive housing histories, landlord references, guarantors at the time of applications, and on top of that also live with substantial lived experience of homelessness, severe mental illness, opiate use, and stigmatization because of that. We also noted for some of our participants this phenomenon that we're terming as persistent homelessness occurred. And what we mean by this is that we noticed that some individuals chose to continue to sleep outdoors or attempt to access shelters despite having access to housing. Well, when we explored this a little bit more with those individuals and as a greater team, we noticed that there are quite a few barriers that exist in the transition between living with homelessness and accessing housing. For example, as Mick mentioned earlier, some of the neighborhoods are less supportive of harm reduction practices or have less resources as readily available than others. And this can begin to draw out feelings and thoughts of rejection and isolation as individuals transition to new communities. Well, speaking of community, we recognize that the creation of community for individuals once they're housed does take time as well. Even if individuals were able to secure housing in familiar spaces that they've made connections in before, we observed a disconnect that exists between the engagement that they had with the community that they lived in while they were experiencing homelessness and the one that they wish to be a part of now they're accessing housing. Lastly, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the logistical lessons that we learned experiencing this project's implementation as housing workers. Well, we noticed that choosing this collaborative approach does increase our workload versus the traditional method as we adjust to make more time for collaboration and providing updates to the team. We also became more mindful throughout this project that our capacity was limited in terms of the amount of opportunities we were able to provide to folks to participate in the project. And now we hope to focus a little bit more on how we can complete those transitions for our participants from our primary services to those of intensive case management or other resources to avoid those bottlenecks. So we are going to hear from two of our participants now in videos too to share a little bit about their experience now that they are living with housing through the Full House Project.
What have you noticed has changed since you have a place?
I've noticed myself I'm a lot happier and I'm more stable. And people have said to me too, we notice you're a lot happier, you're a different woman. They said you're so much different. You look more happier, you sound more happier, you know, and a different woman comes out.
What have you noticed?
When you're homeless or addicted, your problems are like survival, and now my problems are just what outfit am I gonna wear, or what will I have for dinner tonight? That's the, you know, or will I pass my exam? You know, that's the highest amount of worry that I can go to now. Well, as to before, it was, where will I sleep? Where will I eat? Will I die? Will I freeze to death? Am I gonna get robbed tonight? What will happen? Anything can happen when you're homeless. A lot of people don't make it out of there alive, and I'm very grateful I did. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wish you all well. Thank you.
Well, we're really thankful to him as well.
When you're homeless.
So we'll pass it back over to Mick.
This is our last slide. Also my favorite one. So what is next for Full House? The first thing we want to do is try to streamline the referrals, so to make it easier for clients to access long-term support after that initial housing period by bringing in case managers to that table a bit earlier. We want to build sustainable partnerships, so we're looking for that support from the city, from other providers, to offer, especially that stabilization period that we've been trying to figure out with folks, and those rapid housing offers, which Ottawa Community Housing was a big help for us there. We want to see if we can replicate this. If other teams at the agency or anywhere else can adopt and adapt based on what we've done and what's worked for us. We also want to increase community engagement by involving local stakeholders. So, you know, we're thinking of those informal networks here, you know, with thinking of pharmacies, clinics, libraries, peer support, all of those things, all of those kind of harm reduction deserts that we have in different neighborhoods, see if we can get things built up there to accept different folks who are moving in. And finally, we want to have better feedback loops. We've had clients at the table, but we would like for them to be more engaged more often and directly at that table moving forward. So our next phase is about that sustainability, the creativity, the collaboration, so that impact that we've made can continue to grow. It's gotten us this far. We have a long way to go for sure, but we're excited to do it together. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, on a great presentation. It's great work. it's really a nice adaptation, of Housing First to try to respond to people's current needs. We can go over time a bit here, so we've got time for a few questions if you have any.
Hi, this is a fantastic project, so thank you for coming and speaking with us about it today. I just have a question in regards to like the logistics. Are the 10 in one building? Is it scattered site? How did you get landlords involved? Kind of that process there.
Yeah, that's an incredibly good question. So I think I can start answering it, and if anybody else would like to pop in, that would be great too. So it was scattered site. We did prioritize being able to call in those clients to their housing opportunities versus being offered a standardized option for housing. So when we onboarded clients into the project, we did spend time discussing with them areas of the city that they wanted to live in versus areas they didn't. So the 10 clients were spread throughout different Ottawa community housing buildings. It was independent living as well for majority of the project. I think we had one individual who chose to live in supportive housing as well, so that looked a little bit differently as well. Yeah, and in terms of getting landlords to buy in, we did have a pre-existing partnership through our CMHA housing team that allowed us with that flexibility, and we're very grateful for that because it's allowed us to see what could be possible. We also were able to, again, secure housing through supportive housing list and navigating that system as well too for that one individual who chose that route.
Great presentation. Good to see you, Mick. It's been a while. So you asked my question, which was going to be about the landlords and where you found people to engage in this program. So I am curious if you feel like Ottawa Community Housing, because it was social housing, if that really had a huge impact on the success? And do you have plans to continue to move into the private market? And would that change your model to ensure that people had a set move-in date? Because I saw that having a lot of significance, I think, through this. So something to look forward to plan for. And then a really random question is on your profile chart, I saw housing support at the top. Is that your specialist or does that look different than your primary worker?
Who wants to answer? The housing specialist. I'm not sure who we're referring
Yeah,
to.
that was in regards to the housing specialist, housing coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So we have a housing outreach team, which is
So this is the last
workers
question,
connecting,
so don't be too long.
with clients who are experiencing homelessness. We also have the housing team who coordinate housing and work closely with landlords in Ottawa Community Housing, different providers. So they are two separate teams. That's
similarly, yes. Yeah, it's hard to, sometimes I find it hard to cut exactly the roles that it looks like because there's so much overlap, especially when it has to do with specifically housing. But for this project, we really wanted to focus on role definition. So for that being said, yeah, the housing specialist team was more focused on communication with landlords than we were.
Mm-hmm. And anything that's tenancy related and assisting the client in maintaining tenancy. So there was more of a focus on tenancy for that housing team, and then making the unit into a home and integrating into the neighborhood was more the housing outreach worker. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good split.
So my question, as an opiate user for over 10 years, and as an organizer, I look at Vancouver area network of drug users. I look at the Ruse Island project in Kitchener, where we held a park for a year, run by drug addicts, for drug addicts, and I see all the positive steps, and I'm listening to you, and I'm seeing like we are giving you this. The people with opiates have problems, as opposed to there is a war on people who have opiate uses. There's a complexities of reasons for that. What are you doing to give the users themselves sovereignty, like Vandu, and decision-making over their life, as opposed to being just a simple charity?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very valuable point. I really actually appreciate that, because I think that looking at things with levity is super important. In terms of answering the question, I don't think I'm going to have a perfect answer, so I hope you'll bear with me. But I think that our intention was trying to include as much collaboration as possible in being able to decide together versus having options presented to as much as we could. Anybody else have options for that?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference, folks.